Okay, so now that we've worked on solving some equations that have variables on both sides, we are going to take it up a notch. And you can see that this next example is a little bit more complicated than the ones we were doing. So the first thing you're going to notice is that there's a lot more happening in this equation, right? You've got a whole bunch of stuff on the left-hand side of the equation and just like a couple extra things over here on the right. And the equal sign is still like the middle, like the center, even though it kind of doesn't look like it. That's still where the center of your equation is, and you've got your two sides of the equation. So what I personally recommend that you do before you get started, you are going to have to end up canceling out some variables because you can see that you have variables on both sides, similar to some of the ones that you had in the previous example. But before you start canceling things out, it's going to be easier for you if you try to make each side of the equation a little bit more simple. And so I'm going to turn your attention here to where you have a negative 5a and a 2a. Because those have the same variable, they are what we call like terms, which means because they're on the same side of the equal sign and because they both have an a, we can combine them. We can put them together. And for the same reason, negative 2 and positive 8 are also both like terms because neither one of them has a variable. Numbers are always like terms. So since these are like terms, that means that we're able to combine them and make this equation a little bit less crazy because right now there's a lot happening in this equation, right? So I'm going to start off by combining the negative 5a and the negative 2a. If number sense isn't necessarily your forte, I know this has been kind of a crazy year, you can type in your calculator negative 5 minus 2, and that will give you the numerical portion, which is negative 7, and you're just going to need to add that a onto the end. So negative 5a combined with a negative 2a is negative 7a. And then the other like terms that I have in this particular case, like I said, is negative 2 plus 8. If you type in your calculator negative 2 plus 8, you're going to see you get a positive 6. So that means the left-hand side of this equation, we've kind of simplified it, like shrunk it down a little bit here by putting the a's together and by putting the variables together. Now this is as simple as it's going to get because I cannot combine an a and a 6 because they're not like terms. So that is as simple as the left-hand side is going to get. So now let's look on the right-hand side and see if there's something that I can do there. And you can see perhaps that I can because you've got a negative 6a and a positive a. They both have an a, which means you can combine them. There is technically a 1 in front of that a. Whenever you don't see a number in front of a variable, that means there's just one of them. So again, if number sense is a little bit of a struggle for you, you're going to put in your calculator negative 6 plus 1, and that will get you negative 5. So you know negative 6a plus a is negative 5a. So now we've got both sides of the equation a little bit more simple. So now let's talk about what we're going to do to solve it. Even though they're like terms, we can't put those a's together because one is on the right-hand side of the equation and one is on the other side of an equation. We talked about how equations are kind of like a balance beam. You cannot just like move stuff from one side of the balance beam to the other because then it's going to be unbalanced. So we're going to have to do something different and we're going to have to cancel out one of those variables. Technically, it doesn't matter whether you get rid of the negative 5a or the negative 7a. However, if you get rid of this minus 5a, that's going to leave nothing on this side, but you're still going to have a variable and a number on the other side. So it makes more sense, just because it's going to take you fewer steps, if you go ahead and cancel out that minus 7a. So in our previous examples, our variables were always positive. Like we had to cancel out a positive a, for example, with a minus a. In this particular example, instead of getting rid of it's a minus 7a, so we're not going to cancel it out with subtraction, we're going to cancel it out with addition or a positive, because a negative and subtraction really means the same thing. So, and a plus 7 and a positive 7 also means the same thing. So to cancel out that negative 7a, we're going to do that with a plus 7a. So those are going to cancel each other out, and we're going to bring that 6 down. Just like the examples we did previously, though, if I add 7a to the left-hand side of my equal sign, I'm going to have to add 7a to the right-hand side. To the right-hand side of that equal sign. So if number sense is kind of throwing you off a little bit, negative 5 plus 7, if you put that in your calculator, that's going to give you 2. So this is going to be 2a. And then finally, we're down to just a one-step equation. The only other thing we need to cancel is this 2. And because the 2 is sitting next to the a, that means multiplication. The opposite of multiplication is division. So we're going to divide both sides by 2. So on this side, we've got our isolated a. What we do on one side, we have to do on the other side. 6 divided by 2 is going to give us 3. So our final solution for that first example on your page is 3. So moving on to the second example on that paper. I'm a visual person, so I like to draw myself kind of a little imaginary line kind of down through the middle of the equal sign. And the first thing I'm going to look for is there anything I can put together on this side of the equal sign to make it a little bit more simple? Well, contrary to what happened in the last example, we don't have anything over here that we can combine because we can't put together a negative 4 and a minus 7n. One has a variable, one does not. So they're not like terms. So we're just going to have to leave that be at first. And I've got the same problem over here on the other side of the equation. I've got an n and a number without an n. So once again, that means I cannot combine those. So there's nothing I can do to make either side more simple. And I can't put together, even though those are like terms, they're not on the same side of the equal sign, so I can't combine those either. So that means I'm just going to have to start canceling out stuff. It doesn't really matter what you decide to cancel out first, but I personally recommend getting rid of one of the variables first, because you know you're going to have to get rid of one of the variables at some point anyway. And I'm kind of emotionally scarred from when I was a kid and struggled with math. And so I always made mistakes with negatives. So I always try to get rid of the biggest negative that I can find. So I'm going to start with getting rid of that minus 7n. So what's going to get rid of that minus 7n? It's going to be a plus 7n. So those are going to cancel. That's going to leave me with the negative 4 that I just brought down. I added 7n to one side. So I've got to add 7n to this side as well. In case you're having a hard time with the number sense, you can just do negative 4 plus 7, and that'll give you 3. And then you just add the n onto the end, and I'm going to bring down that plus 14 because I still haven't done anything with that yet. So remember, our goal is to get that variable by itself. So what is sitting here with the variable that needs to go? Well, I've got a 3. And I've got that 14. If I start off by trying to cancel out, there's technically nothing wrong with getting rid of the 3 first. But if I do that, 3 sitting next to the m, of course, means multiplication. The opposite of multiplying is dividing, right? So I would need to divide everything by 3. And if I do like this, for example, that's going to turn out to be kind of a messy decimal. So I don't want to do that. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the plus 14 first, which I'm going to do with a minus 14. So those are going to cancel. I'm going to bring down the 3n. I subtracted 14 from one side, so I'm going to subtract the 14 from the other side. -4 minus 14 is -18. And finally, I'm down to a one-step equation. All I need to do is cancel out that 3, which we've already said we're going to do that by dividing both sides by 3. So I've got -6 is equal to n. So if you flip over to page 2 of that activity, you're going to see that these are all very similar to the ones that we just did. You're going to have some of them, like number 1, for example, I'm going to give you a little bit of a hint, where you've got some like terms on the same side of the equal sign that you're going to want to combine before you do anything else. I'm going to draw that little imaginary line right there. But then you might have some like number 2, where on this side of the equal sign, we can't combine the 2 and the 4x. On this side of the equal sign, we can't combine the -16 and the x. So you're just going to start canceling things out. And as I indicated previously, I don't care if you find it a little bit icky to show your work on the touch screen. That's fine if you don't want to do that. Just make sure that you upload a picture of your work. However, still use these answer boxes right here on ClassKick, because if you type the answer in correctly, it's going to pop up with a little +1 to tell you that you did it correctly. And so you want to make sure that you use that feature as you're working, and then that way you can message me if you get stuck on something because you're having a hard time finding the right answer. So I don't care where your work ends up being. You can, again, you can text it to me, you can do it here on the app, whatever you want to do, as long as I get it, I don't care. But still use these answer boxes to check your work so that way you know for sure that you've gotten it right.